شلون قزيان مقبة أنا إيمان رومينا جوناس بشأن تيمتون الأطلع تيوي و Assyrians for Education. وجيب دازاخن البيتد Jessica's House قد إلي قمدية تورلوك كاليفورنيا. Jessica's House إلى non-profit organization قد بشتلا شتستا جو شيتة بتريسر نيشت دا organization إلى هيرتا قدم برسوب يسور teenagers young adults وبكل بته قد خا برسوبا يدو كل بته من يخلق دي كم سوية نانو تسابون خاطع أخونا يما بابا ان برسوب قد خشاننا هيرتا بياينو تازيني al Jessica's House طالعتون برنامج بريشه group therapy و بكمسي نقاشيتون دي كمسي ميوزيك أغيرون اتلون بأرخانة رو با بريشه باشورنا هايري قا ياردين قد خدشا مخيشه موصري عدي ويدالة عزخ Jessica's House تبقخ بتري آمودت دا organization قد خطور رو با شابيرا يبيلن.
My name is Adrienne Gillespie, and I'm the outreach coordinator at Jessica's House. The reason we got our name Jessica's House, we are a grief facility, a peer support grief facility for children who've lost a sibling or a parent, and we're supporting children, young adults, teens, young adults, and their families. But Jessica is the reason we got our name, Jessica's House. She was a little girl who had leukemia when she was 5 years old, and one of our employees here, Nancy Daly, has worked with her one-on-one and was kind of her one-on-one tutor because she couldn't go to school anymore, going through all her cancer treatments. She ended up dying when she was 9 years old, and her dad, along with Erin Nelson, who is our founder and director, because Erin had her own losses, like her own husband died in a mid-air collision, and then soon after that, her mother died, and she ended up bringing her sister and raising her sister, her younger sister. So she had 2 children left behind, and then her sister came to live with them, and she was really researching and trying to figure out how to help them through their own grief as she was grieving. And then Jessica's dad lost and mom lost their daughter. And so together, along with Nancy Daly and some other people in the community, decided to start a grief support group in a small church in Turlock. And then it kind of just, the need started arising and grew from there. And then they started in a little house on Main Street in Turlock in 2012. It was like officially started, Jessica's House, and had many families coming through. But it was this little tiny house, probably, I think it was like 1,100 square feet. And so they started realizing the need was greater and greater, and they started having a waiting list, which grief doesn't wait. And we learned that that was something that they were just praying that they could find a place to facilitate all the families that needed this support in the area. And we also, one thing I mentioned earlier is that there are only 4 grief facilities, grief support facilities in all of California. There's 400 in the nation, but only 4 in California. So the need is great.
My name is Courtney Morse. I'm the Director of Development and Marketing here for Jessica's House. And I want to show you this wall. This is our Heart Circle wall. So we had a 3.5 million donation grant from EMC Health, and they matched all of these other hearts. So every other heart on this wall represents another 3.5 million for a total of 7 million that we raised in that. The red represents our Scarlet level, and those are donations or pledges of $5,000 up to $9,999. The blue represents our Indigo level, which starts at $10,000 up to $24,000. This color represents our Scarlet level, which starts at $5,000. That's either a pledge or a donation. This color is our Indigo level, which starts at $10,000. This is our Poppy level, which starts at $25,000. This color is our Amber level, which starts at $50,000. Our Jade level starts at $100,000. And then our Violet level represents donations and pledges of $250,000 and up.
Carter Nelson Memorial Golf Tournament. We do that once a year in October. And this is our founder's son died after this house, right when they were starting to, so 5 years ago, in 2020, when they were just starting to build this home, she lost her son, who was 19 years old at the time. So this room is our pre-littles room, which is ages 0 through 4-year-olds come into this room, and you'll see a name, and under each room they kind of donated the resources to pay for this specific room and its decoration. So you can go walk around in here, but this is where our babies, we believe that if children are able to love, they're able to grieve. And we know that babies grieve. They get a feeling of what their parents are feeling, their siblings are feeling. They feel that too. And so this is one of the rooms where we come in and have, the babies and the 4-year-olds will stay in this room. There's a little kitchen over here, there's a little slide, and it's just one of those ways they can work through their grief. In this room, we've had children who were not able to even speak after they've lost their person, the parent, and they've started just through play and interaction, they started speaking again and having the courage to communicate again, just because it's given them an opportunity to kind of work through their grief with play.
And this will be like a couple of kids will be doing it, playing together, or?
Mm-hmm. We usually have, usually no more than about 5 children in here at a time. And if it gets crowded and we have babies that need to sleep, we have another room for that, for the little ones just to be rocked.
And how young is the youngest?
Youngest, birth through age 4, go in here. Anybody who, they can bring their children any age. Now this is our littles room. And one thing you'll notice if you look around at the walls in here, there are guidelines on the walls that we give every night when children and families come. We have these guidelines for the children, and one of those guidelines on the wall that's really, really powerful here is I pass. Because sometimes when children come here and their grief is so heavy, they don't have words. And so we don't make them share. They don't have to say anything. They can just come and know that they're not alone in their grief. I'm gonna show you something that we do every single night with every age group. This is called a check-in chart. So the children will be sitting here. There are weighted blankets if they need them or they want them, which is just an extra form of comfort. They come in here, they have a meal. So we make sure that their stomachs are full, because there's a sense of safety having your stomach full and having a meal. They come in, they have a meal in the kitchen. We'll show you that at the end. And then we all break up into different age groups, and the adults go upstairs. But every group, no matter what, they do a check-in. So they say their name, their age. We actually say the person who died in our family, and we say their name, because sometimes they just can't talk about their person who died. And here, this is a safe place to talk about their person who died. They can tell us how they died. They don't have to. And then they look at these pictures and they can tell us how they're feeling. They could say, I feel like the heart today. I feel like the star. They don't have to say anything else. Or they could just point. They don't have to explain. But we want them to know that we care about how they feel. Also, everybody's going through different emotions. Grief looks differently in every child. And then after they've all checked in, every single group night, we have a book that we read to each age group. And then they have an art project. So there's a book specifically that has to do with grief, or maybe working through that grief. And then an art project. This week, our art project, they're actually creating their own check-in charts. So they're drawing their own pictures to say how they feel, so they can have their own check-in chart to take home. And they love doing this. But every time a family comes, they come every other week. Every time a family comes, they have a different book and a different art activity and a different theme, just to help them. Again, none of us are counselors here. Well, we do have a marriage and family therapist, but we are not counseling these families. We are companioning, walking through their grief with them, kind of just observers and companioning, and giving them healthy outlets, because we want these children to grow up down the road and not turn to really negative, harmful things because of their emotions weren't dealt with, because grief is something that's inside that needs to come out. So when they cry, we're like, that's good. It's healthy to cry. Tears are good. It's a good thing to get out. And also, if when they show us how they feel, we're like, that's okay. You might feel totally different from this other child that's in here. That's okay, because we all grieve in a different way. We have a meal here, which is provided by Jessica's house. Well, the donors that provide Jessica the opportunity for them to come here. So they've been given a meal, and then they come for about an hour and a half. Their program is about an hour and a half, so they come and eat with their families, break up into their groups, their age groups, and then we have a closing ceremony at the very end, and they all go home. And each family, when they've signed up for a group night, they come every other week. So they'll come twice a month.
So does the family stay with them as a group?
So that's a good question. And when adults come, they have the option to go up to their own adult group, or they can just sit in some of our comfortable areas, because sometimes the adult that brings them, it might be a parent or caregiver, and they need the support as well. Or it could just be somebody who, like a social worker that brings somebody, or maybe an aunt, just to get them here. But they have to stay on campus, but they do not have to go to a group. But then they all leave together. So when the families come, they come and stay together, but not in the same rooms.
So we have 14 therapeutic spaces here at Jessica's house, and so we'll show you just a couple. This one is our sand room, and sand play is very therapeutic for just working through anything, but obviously here at Jessica's house, we're working through grief. So these little sand trays are containers, so they can put their story in this container. It does not leave the container, it doesn't leave the room. They're just kind of working through their grief in this container of sand. And they have all these different tools and characters and items to tell their story. And because their stories are all different, and sometimes they want to tell their story using people, sometimes they want to use dinosaurs. It just depends on their story. Sometimes their story involves emergency personnel, sometimes it involves weapons or substance use. And so we have pieces for all of their types of stories that they can tell. So throughout the house, we actually have some of Jessica Everett's art, and Jessica again is who we named the house after. So this is a drawing that she did, and then over there we have another piece of art that she did as well.
So the one thing to notice, so this is the art room. And if you'll notice over here, everything is very organized and color coded, and that's for a reason. We're trying to be very intentional about being like a chaos-free zone, because when someone dies in our family, our whole life is pretty much disheveled. It's a mess. Like, it feels chaotic, it feels unsettling. But when they come here to Jessica's house, we want them to have a sense of peace and order. And if they want to find a green crayon, we want them to know where to find it. And if you'll look over here, these are just some samples of some of the art that some of our kids will do. When they first come for our family orientation, which is their first experience with Jessica's house, they do something called Color of My Heart. So this is an example of something that I think it was a middle school girl did, and she was explaining like how her colors looked before the death of her person, and what the world looked like to her after. And you can just see, like, this is just so telling how bright and cheerful, and how it gets darker, and just how she's able to express without any words at all kind of how they're feeling. So a lot of these art projects that they do, we try to help get their grief, their emotions to the outside by expressing it in some form of art. And so we've had some really, really interesting ways that they can actually express themselves. Like, for example, here's just a little one, an iceberg. Maybe this is how people see you, how an iceberg is really deep, but look, I'm okay, I'm feeling okay. But down below, what people don't see is this heaviness, and I'm crying, and I miss my person, and I'm sad, and so we just try to do intentional art activities to kind of, again, we're not counseling, but we're kind of guiding and asking questions and trying to give them healthy ways to express themselves. Here is just our supply room, and again, we are so thankful for the community. The community often donates all these items so that families can come here and have all these resources. So the community sometimes will do drives at their high schools or at their or at places of work, and they'll donate. Like, what if we need paint for the next activity coming up, or extra paper, extra clay or Play-Doh, where we have a lot of this is donated, and that's why the kids can come and do all these art activities. So this is just our extra little storage room for the extra art. And then you'll be walking into this room, and you can go ahead with this room.
So this room is our music room, and a lot of the things in here were donated as well. We have a lot of talented and passionate people in our community that love music and have donated guitars and the piano and just some of the little instruments. But this is just another room or a therapeutic space where the children can work through their grief in a different way. So one of the things that we might do with those little drums on the table is ask them, what did their person's laugh sound like? Something that they, one, may not have been asked, and two, it's something that most of the time we don't want to forget. So being able to think about that and replicate that, and then all the kids will go around the room and they'll replicate each person's laugh. Some other things that they've done in here is they'll play some of the songs that maybe remind them of their person. We've had children and teens write original music that are helping them work through their grief, and we have.
So this room is our dramatic play room. I'm trying to turn the light on. This is a dramatic place, so the backdrop can change. And you know, grief has a different fingerprint, just like we all have different fingerprints. Some kids, their outlet would be to dress up and act things out. And so this gives them a place to do that. They can direct a whole entire play. We have all sorts of costumes. We have different backdrops that we can pull out. And so this just gives another outlet. Some of the kids really like to get the adult volunteers in here to play all sorts of parts. So it's a really fun, a lot of the kids really like this room.
It's a theater room.
Mm-hmm. Here, I'll open this cabinet for you to see some of our extra costumes. Of course, there has to be jewelry for the girls, right? And magic wands.
So this room is called our hospital playroom, and this came from an idea that we saw at another grief center. When we were building the house, we visited a couple of grief centers to get ideas.
And this room is really powerful because people die in hospitals, and so sometimes there might be a trauma associated with that if the child was present in the hospital. There might also be times when the child wasn't allowed to go to the hospital, or during COVID, when families weren't allowed to visit. So this room allows them to have a different experience and kind of hopefully work through some of that trauma. They can be the doctor, and they can fix the patient who right now is a stuffed dog. They can be the patient, and the other kids are working on them. Everything in here replicates a hospital room, so they can use the whiteboard. They have the x-ray machines. The other thing I think that's powerful is that for those kids that were in the hospital, they may have been curious about what goes on in the hospital room, and they weren't able to touch anything or look at anything, or so they're allowed to do that in here too. They're allowed to kind of just learn a different side of a hospital room, that it's not always a place where someone dies.
This room is our slow movement room, and so it's a place where they can come if they just want to be calm. We can turn the lights down. We give them like yoga moves if they want to do that. This little chair, they can sit and swing in it and have that slow motion, that movement back and forth, kind of like how we used to rock our babies back and forth. It's calming to the nervous system, and if they're really feeling a lot, sometimes just a good way to sway back and forth is calming. We also try to give them, we have books like this, Breathe Like a Bear, different ways to breathe to help calm down their nervous system and give them just a way to help calm their anxiousness. We also want to give them tools to take that they can use if they're at school and they're starting to feel like overwhelming grief or overwhelming anger because of their grief, or just all the feelings that they're feeling inside. So give them techniques to breathe. We have all sorts of things that they can do in here. Things that they can squish. We have this is going to be noisy, but it's a really cool tool. If they're sitting here and focusing on these beads, on these little balls, and trying to settle them and be really still, they're focusing on this, and it takes their focus off of that extreme emotion they might be feeling. So this room is just for calming.
So outside, when the weather's nice, it's very popular for the kids and teens and middles to come out here and get their kind of larger energy out, sometimes their larger emotions. And a lot of our play structures are designed to have them focus on what they're doing. So if you come down here, here we have like this rickety log bridge, so it moves, so you're having to focus as you're balancing, and what we teach the kids with that is that when you're focusing on something, kind of all your other emotions go away. So any anxiety you might be feeling, any sadness, they're not there anymore because you're having to focus on an activity. So those are some of the coping skills that we teach the children, middles and teens. There's another log that moves over there. There's a couple of different rope course activities. We also have the basketball court. We have a large lawn where they might play soccer, they might throw a ball. Just lots of ways for them to get their energy out and to focus on something other than those big emotions that sometimes take up a lot of space.
And there's always a supervisor, right? Someone,
Yes.
a coach or...
Yes, yeah. So we always have multiple volunteers in each age group. So if the kids were to come outside, unless it was just one or two kids, we would have multiple of the volunteers out here. And then we also have the kids use the buddy system. So if somebody's on the rickety log or the moving log, they're still going to hold someone's hand just so they don't fall. And it also teaches them that someone is there to hold my hand as I walk through this.
Over here, past our lawn, we'll walk that direction. We actually have our Jessica's house garden, because one thing that we've learned, grief takes a lot of things from us. Like, we don't see in color for a while. People have expressed they can't even taste their food anymore. And so different, as many possible ways that we can help engage their senses, so they can go out to our little garden and pick something and smell it. They can taste it. If they want to pick a little cutie, an orange, and peel it and taste it, they can. At some point we have berries, not right now in the summer. There's not a lot out there right now, but it's really, really amazing because the garden club in Turlock, they come and take care of those little spots for us, and they help us like plant different kinds of vegetables and fruits and berries and flowers, just because we want to talk about all the senses and how that helps us in our grieving process. There's a fire pit straight out here as well, where if the teenagers want to get a cup of hot cocoa in the evening and go and sit by that, they can go sit out there and have their little meeting. So this is winter time, so sometimes you'll see a lot more things growing out here. And again, like all these are trimmed right now, but you'll see berries in the summer. But just like the Garden Club of Turlock, they do a really good job of helping us keep this up. We can pick vegetables and send them home with families. We've had peppers here, but it's just one of those things that when people are grieving, just to kind of pique their senses. The sense of smell, the sense of taste, all of that kind of gets dulled. as people are grieving. So it's just another opportunity. Just like we want kids to be outside and not looking down at their iPads or watching TV, it's more healing to just be outside. So getting outside and experiencing this. So pick it and smell it or taste it or feel it, just to get our senses activated again.
So just like we have a talking room for our littles, we have one for every age group. This one is our teen talking room. So the teens will start in here, and it's really designed for each age group as well. So back here, they have a little coffee bar, all decaf, or there's hot chocolate as well. They have their Jenga game, and each little piece has questions on it to get them designed to think about things and answer questions while they're also playing a game and while they're focusing on trying to keep the tower even. All of our rooms have a question of the day, which is also part of the check-in. So that can either be talked about during check-in, or it can be talked about in one of the activity rooms, which is why it is in every room. So this current check-in question is, what is one thing you would like us to know about the person who died? So sometimes they cover that in the talking room, or like I said, sometimes we talk about that during the therapeutic spaces. We also have, in most of the rooms, we have Starburst. So just like we feed them a full meal, snacking on juicy and tangy different treats, it triggers to our brain that we're safe. So Starburst is one of our favorite treats that our families and our children can have. But to get a Starburst, you have to answer a question. So they pick what color they want, and then there's color-coded questions as well. Some of them are about the person who died. Some of them are just a question about themselves. It just varies. So when they pick a Starburst, they answer the question, and then they get their treat.
Can I answer a question?
So one thing we've learned about teenagers, well, it's universal about teenagers, if they come in here and they don't necessarily want to be here, they don't really feel like sharing about their person who died, sometimes they're just grumpy, you know. The kids, the younger kids, have all these rooms and they're excited, but the teenagers at first are often in here and like, ugh, I don't want to talk. But that's why we have a lot of these games. We'll play Uno, but we'll ask questions. We'll play Jenga, we'll give those Starbursts, we'll ask questions. And then after they've been here for a while, they become really good friends and they feel like safe and freedom to talk. So then they want to come back. So it just takes them a little bit longer sometimes. This room is called our teen activity room. And so it's also after they've done their check-in, if they want to come inside, which a lot of them would like to go play basketball outside or play soccer or whatever. But they have ping pong, they have basketball, we have other games in here. Again, just the opportunity to get them to interact. So even sometimes when they're playing basketball, our volunteers or our leaders in here will ask them questions related to the person who died. And this room, we modeled this time machine after another grief center that was in Texas, I believe. But it's really cool because they can go in here and they can go back in time. They can set the date and time, and they could go back in time and say something to the person who died, or they can go forward, or what it is today, and tell them something they would like. Oh, I wish you had seen these for that soccer goal, or I wish you had seen this board. Looks like they were just doodling on it, but often there's questions in there on that board if there's something you'd like to say to the person who died. And then they can go in here and have privacy, and usually an adult will go in there with them, a volunteer, but they can talk on the phone, they can set the date, and they can have their own little moment with the person. So everything we do here is hopefully the opposite of just focusing on an iPad or YouTube or a screen, which kind of keeps them staying within themselves. We really want to give them like the opportunity to look out and really see the world. And so if they want to play a game, if they want to interact, all of that's going to help them process their grief way quicker than just keeping their face in a screen.
So this room here is our middle's talking room. So like all the other talking rooms that we've showed you, it's pretty much exactly the same. It's just a space for that age group to come together, do their check-in, do their question of the day, talk about the art, and then they'll go out to other spaces usually.
So this room is actually 2 rooms in one, where we have the sensory, slow, calming things that they can touch and manipulate, and then the volcano room, which you have to video in the volcano room, because big, huge movements, they can jump into this foam pit, they can hit the walls with pool noodles, they can scream, it's padded in there. Oh good, there's a light.
Wow.
Yeah, so they can jump in there. Of course, you know, they can, we limit how many people can be in there at the same time, so they're safe, but it's a fun place for them to get loud and angry and get their frustration out. And then when they come out from here, we kind of ask them, how does your body feel now that you were able to jump and scream and roll around?
So it's all soundproof?
Well, it's kind of soundproof, semi-soundproof. And then they can come out here and do quiet activities. Little things, like you can even, like sitting here and focusing on picking out all the stars out of this rice, where it's just the opposite of that volcano room. It's calming. And sometimes we'll ask them how they feel, and this board right here is called a Buddha board, and it's just water. And sometimes we'll say, tell us how you feel. Sometimes they might feel mad or sad. And then sometimes we ask them, how does your body feel after you leave this room? And sometimes they'll be like, oh, I feel better. I'm feeling better. Like, do you feel a difference in your body? That's what we want them to be aware of, how their body feels. So again, like a pool noodle isn't usually gonna hurt someone. So having a pool noodle at home and going and hitting it against the tree or an outside wall or something is just a good way, rather than taking your aggression and anger and frustration out on a person or your sibling or maybe a teacher. Just giving them other options for healthy outlets.
Now there is a second floor. So we are going to the second floor of this beautiful building that I'm going to soon move in.
So the loft is just an area where some of our adults that either they're just the transportation for the child, or even if they are the caregiver, if they don't want to talk or participate in group, this is an area where they can come and sit down and just kind of relax. So this is our volunteer room. So our volunteers come in here every night. They have their name tag on the wall here, so they find their name. It has their picture so that the families know who they are. They can put their stuff in lockers, cubbies, and then they also started a little library amongst themselves and with our staff, where they bring books and they take books and they read them, so it's really fun. I have more to say about volunteers, but yeah, catch your breath. So our volunteers are just really integral to the work that we do. Every night we probably have at least 20 volunteers and only, 2 to 3 staff in each group night. So the volunteers, they're just so important. They're in, they build these relationships with the families. They build these relationships with the families and the children, and they just walk alongside them, and they're their companion through their grieving. And and that's something that we're always available for, always looking for. So we have volunteer orientations 3 times a year, and so you would participate in that, and then you would be cleared to start group nights. And so it's a 3-hour commitment, minimum 2 times a month, and we ask that a volunteer commits for at least 1 year.
Now we are entering the adult talking room.
So we have 3 adult talking rooms upstairs. So one of them we generally use for our young adults, but we also have 2 Spanish, like pretty large Spanish speaking groups. And it's really amazing because they have become like family because they support each other so well. So what happens in these adult talking rooms, they don't think that they're coming here for support at all. They think they're signing up because their kids need help, which they do. But then they end up finding such support in these groups as well. I usually am with an adult group on Thursday evenings, and they are so encouraging to one another. And the one benefit of having all the adults meeting in this room, we could have somebody who's maybe had a recent death in their family, maybe within months of them coming here. And then another family might have been here for a few years and they're further along. And so what we've noticed is that some of the newer, most recent deaths in the families, they kind of borrow hope from these other people sitting across the way from them. And they see like, look, they're still getting out of bed every day. They were able to bring their kids here. They got their kids to school today. I mean, some of them, they come in and they just sit. They don't have to share. Again, they can pass anytime they want as an adult or any age. Sometimes they sit. We've actually had a gentleman come in here and just close his eyes and rest. And I said, you know what? If that's what you need to do, don't apologize. You need to sleep, you come here and rest. You brought your kids here. That was a big deal. Like that, if that's what you accomplished today, good for you. Because sometimes just them getting up and getting to work and getting their kids out the door is exhausting. Getting out of bed in the morning is exhausting for some people when they're grieving so deeply. And so we have groups for sibling loss. We have groups for parent loss. So the child's siblings, the child's parent. But we also have hope after homicide, hope after suicide, hope after accidental overdose. We have heartstrings, which is infant loss or miscarriage. And then we have our Spanish-speaking groups, and then we have young adult groups. So we have 2 young adult groups kind of split up according to their age. But again, this is a peer support group. So the facilitators in here, we ask questions, we get the conversation started, but we're not giving advice. We're actually just asking them how they're doing, what they're going through. And then they start sharing with each other and encouraging each other. What's been amazing is some of our families will take each other's numbers and meet outside for coffee, and they become like family. So this place, it does more than just help those children in those therapeutic spaces. The adults get to get ministered to as well. And you'll notice, like even the colors in the rooms, like the soothing colors, those were very intentional. So this really soft green. Aaron Nelson, our founder and director, had a really integral part in choosing all of this, but there is a reason, like the colors. We want people to come in here and feel a relaxing, peaceful presence.
Yeah. Wow. This is another meeting room.
This is another adult talking room, but it also is the room where our volunteers and staff have what's called pre-meeting and post-meeting. And so that is an hour before group and an hour after group. Pre-meeting is designed for everyone to come together. You know, we're all coming from different spaces. A lot of us are coming from work or just different things going on in our life. So it's a chance for everyone to come in here and get ready to be with the families, to kind of put everything else aside and get ourselves ready. And then we also go through who's attending each night, how many are in each group. And that gives the groups a chance to talk about, okay, we have a large group, let's do our play in this room and let's do this here. So it gives us a chance to prepare essentially. And then everyone goes downstairs and gets food as well and sits with the families and eats with them. And then when it's time for group, they do that. After the closing ceremony with the families, all the volunteers and staff come back upstairs. And that's a chance to just talk about how it went. Did anything come up? Are things going well? Do we need to change anything? And then it's also a chance for everybody to have some levity and lightness after the evening. So usually we'll ask a fun question at the end or do an activity to kind of get everyone in like a lighter mood, ready to go home.
Wow. So this room is where our families come, and they get to come and eat before our group each night. So, and it's also where at the very end of the night, they'll do their closing ceremony. And so every night that they come, we'll have pizza here, we'll have salad and fruit and cookies and lemonade. And here's some of our other staff right over here having their lunch.
So Jessica's house is located in Turlock, and as we know, grief touches people far and wide. So one thing that our executive director, Erin Nelson, and our program director, Colleen Montague, one way that they wanted to spread Jessica's house is to write a book. So this is drawn from personal experiences as well as the professional experience from working at Jessica's house. This book, When Grief Comes Home, is a gentle guide for living through loss while supporting your child. So it's part memoir, as Erin has sections in each chapter where she talks about the types of losses that she has had and how she's had support from the community and how she's dealt with that. And then it's part resource where there's ideas for parents and caregivers. This book is available where all books are sold: Amazon, Barnes & Noble, Target. It's also sold by Baker Books, and it will be releasing on February 4th. So it is available for pre-order or order after that. And then from this, they also developed a podcast. The podcast is also called When Grief Comes Home, and it features Erin and Colleen and an additional host, Brad. And it kind of goes through the book as well. And new episodes are released every other Tuesday. And the book is $18.99 on most sites. So Jessica's house is completely free for our families, and that is 100% in thanks to all of our donors, but especially our Heart Circle donors. And as we mentioned, this is our Heart Circle wall, and we are opening it back up for an extension. So when someone joins the Heart Circle, they're joining a community of other donors, and they're usually committing to a pledge of sometimes 5 years, sometimes 3 years. So they're making a commitment to Jessica's house and to the families that we serve to keep Jessica's house free. And so that wall is going to extend all the way along here. All this blank space will soon be covered up with hearts for years to come. And so if you want more information about how to become a Heart Circle donor, to join our Heart Circle community, or just to support Jessica's house, visit jessicashouse.org.